The Vidians laughed. They always laughed at the human fleet, a rusting pile of scrap metal cobbled together from the dregs of the galaxy. But their mocking laughter echoed too loudly in the sterile conference room on Sigma 9 station, grating on Admiral Andrew Brown's nerves as he faced off against the serpentine Ambassador Wren. Brown gritted his teeth, hands clenched at his sides, straining to maintain a veneer of composure as the scaled alien continued her disdainful tirade. She spoke of humanity as lesser beasts, primitive apes still scratching in the mud even as they dared to claw their way to the stars. The Vidian Empire could crush the United Earth Federation like an insect beneath their heel, Wren hissed, eyes glinting with malice, if they so much as gave the word. Outmatched and outgunned, the UEF stood no chance against the Vidians' overwhelming technological superiority. But what they lacked in firepower, humanity made up for in tenacity, ingenuity, and sheer stubborn will. The indomitable human spirit, unyielding as steel, had carried them from their cradle on Earth to the very edges of known space. Brown spoke of this, voice low and fierce with conviction, but the Vidian only scoffed. Wren's mocking laughter still rang in Brown's ears as he stalked from the conference room, a cold fury crystallizing in his gut. Let the arrogant Vidians underestimate humanity. Let them dismiss the UEF as a minor nuisance beneath their notice. They would soon learn the true measure of human resolve. On the bridge of his flagship, the UES Indomitable, Admiral Brown received word that could turn the tide of the brewing conflict. The UEF's best scientists had developed a cloaking prototype, an experimental device to render ships invisible to sensors and naked eye alike. A squadron of human vessels, outfitted with the bleeding-edge tech, could slip past watchful Vidian eyes to the Barnard's star colony or penetrate deep into enemy territory itself. It was a gamble, as fraught with risk as it was rich with potential. If the Vidians caught wind of the cloak too soon, they might rain down Armageddon on Earth itself, rather than suffer humans to wield such power. All of humanity's hopes, dreams, and fears now hung in the balance, teetering on a precipice between subjugation and ascension. As the invisible ships launched toward their clandestine proving ground, Admiral Brown set his jaw, a predatory gleam in his eyes. In this game of cosmic chess, with the fate of worlds in the balance, audacious gambits could make legends, or consign humanity to oblivion. The jump through hyperspace seemed to stretch on for an eternity as Admiral Brown paced the bridge of the Indomitable, every muscle coiled with tension. Each second that ticked by brought them closer to the isolated mining colony on Barnard's star and to the reckoning that awaited them there. As the ship decelerated back into normal space, the stark red dwarf sun of Barnard's star filled the viewports, casting a baleful crimson glow across the bridge. Brown narrowed his eyes at the sight of the Vidian warship already in orbit, a sleek dagger of alien metal poised above the vulnerable colony. "Sir, we're being hailed by the colony," Lieutenant Chen reported, fingers flying over her console. "It's Commander Shaw. She says the Vidians are already on the surface. They're demanding to inspect the research facilities." Brown's fist tight, a vein pulsing in his temple. The trap was springing shut sooner than he'd anticipated. "Patch her through." Shaw's face filled the view screen, lined with tension and streaked with grime. Behind her, Brown could make out the grimy prefab structures of the colony, swarming with armed Vidian soldiers. "Admiral, I'm not sure how much longer I can stall them," Shaw said urgently, pitching her voice low. "They're tearing the place apart, looking for the cloaking labs. It's only a matter of time before—" A burst of energy sizzled past Shaw's head, strobing the screen with actinic light. Vidian shouts erupted in the background as Shaw dove for cover, the feed dissolving into static. "Commander," Brown barked, "report." "Cloaking failure!" Shaw's voice crackled across the comm, nearly drowned out by the chatter of weapons fire. "One of the test ships, its cloak shorted out. Vidians detected—" The channel cut off in a squeal of feedback. Brown slammed a fist against the bulkhead, the metal ringing with the impact. The cloaking devices had failed at the worst possible moment, their test ships now flashing like beacons for all to see. "Sir, the Vidian ship is launching shuttles," Chen called out, alarm etching her features. They're heading for the surface, loaded with troops, and I'm picking up some kind of transmission from the colony. Tight beam? It's aimed right at the Vidian vessel. Brown's blood ran cold. There was only one reason for the Vidians to commit ground forces now. Only one thing that could have drawn that urgent transmission. The unthinkable had happened. They know, he breathed, the words leaden on his tongue. The Vidians know about the cloaking project. In that instant, the entire scope of the unfolding catastrophe crystallized in Brown's mind with sickening clarity. The Vidians would stop at nothing to seize the cloaking technology now, even if they had to raise the entire colony to ash. And if they managed to capture the scientists, to pry the secrets of the cloak from them. A chorus of frantic alerts dragged Brown back to the horrific present as the Indomitable's sensors screamed in warning. The Vidian ship had locked weapons on the helpless colony, torpedoes and particle lances aimed at the fragile domes that sheltered nearly 1,000 innocent lives. "Incoming transmission from the Vidian captain," Chen reported, her voice shaking. On screen, Brown sank into his chair, hands balling into fists at his sides as the sneering face of the Vidian commander filled the view screen. "Admiral Brown," the alien hissed, tongue flicking between razor fangs, "you have been caught in an act of egregious deception. Did you really think your pitiful attempts at stealth would escape our notice? You humans reek of desperation." "I don't know what you're talking about," Brown bit out through gritted teeth, mind racing. "Spare me your lies." The Vidian slammed a clawed fist against his console. "We detected your cloaked ships, and our agents have already found your secret labs. Even now, my troops are securing the prototypes and research data." He leaned forward, yellow eyes boring into Brown with pure malice. "Surrender the scientists who developed this technology to us, immediately and unconditionally. Fail to comply, and I will order an orbital bombardment to wipe this miserable colony from the face of the planet. You have 5 minutes to decide." The screen went dark. Brown sagged back in his chair, the weight of an impossible choice crashing down on him like a physical blow. Sacrifice the brightest minds in the UEF, the architects of humanity's last hope, or condemn hundreds of innocent colonists to fiery oblivion? There would be no mercy from the Vidians, no reprieve. The devil's bargain hung before him, a sadistic mockery of all he believed in. Duty battled principle. Pragmatism wrestled with conscience. The ghosts of generations yet unborn cried out to him from across the lonely void, the future itself holding its breath. Brown closed his eyes, damning himself for the words already thickening in his throat. As the last seconds of the Vidian ultimatum ticked away, he gave the order that would damn him regardless of what came after. "Send the following transmission to the Vidian ship." "Send the following transmission to the Vidian ship," Brown said, his voice hollow. "We cannot comply with your demands. The lives of our scientists are not ours to barter." As soon as the words left his mouth, Brown keyed the emergency channel. "All ships, initiate Operation Scorched Earth. I repeat, Scorched Earth is a go." The bridge erupted into frantic activity. Brown's eyes locked onto the tactical display, watching as the cloaked test squadron maneuvered into position around the colony. "Sir, the Vidians are powering up their weapons." Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked with tension. Brown's expression resolute. "Begin evacuation procedures. Priority 1 is Dr. Patel and her core team. Get them off that rock." The next few minutes passed in a blur of chaotic action. On the main view screen, flashes of weapons fire erupted across the colony's surface as UEF troops engaged the Vidian strike force. Shuttles streaked from the ground, racing for the relative safety of space. "We've got Dr. Patel," the pilot's triumphant cry crackled over the comms. "Making for Rendezvous Point Alpha." Brown allowed himself a moment of relief before barking his next order. "All ships, prepare to scuttle on my mark." The Vidian warship loomed larger on the tactical display, closing in on the escaping shuttles. Brown's finger hovered over the detonation command, every muscle taut with anticipation. "Mark!" A dozen antimatter cores breached simultaneously. The resulting explosion tore through space, engulfing the colony in a blinding conflagration. The Vidian ship reeled, its shields flickering under the onslaught. As the light faded, Brown surveyed the devastation. Where the colony had stood, only a smoking crater remained. The Vidian vessel limped away, venting atmosphere. "Sir," Chen's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm detecting a tight beam transmission from the Vidian ship. They're sending something back to their home system." Brown's blood ran cold. They hadn't been fast enough. The Vidians knew about the cloaking technology now. The stakes had just risen exponentially. Days later, Brown stood before a panel of grim-faced UEF officials. The fabricated story of a tragic reactor accident at Barnard's Star scrolled across news feeds behind them. "The cloaking project has been moved to a secure location," Admiral Zhao informed him. "But our intelligence suggests the Vidians are already mobilizing to find it. We're assigning you our top operative. This is Zara." A lithe woman with sharp eyes stepped forward, her gaze boring into Brown. He nodded, recognizing the steel in her posture. She would be invaluable in the coming conflict. "There's more," Zhao continued. "We're bringing in Dr. Elena Sokolov to head up the research team. If anyone can crack the cloaking problem, it's her." Brown's mind raced, piecing together the new players and possibilities. "What's our next move?" Zhao's expression hardened. "We've identified a potential breakthrough. There's a material called neutronium that might stabilize the cloaking field. The catch? It's only found in the volcanoes of Hephaestus." "I'll put together a team," Brown said, already mentally selecting candidates. "Captain Jack Pierce will lead the expedition," Zhao countered. "Your job is to keep the Vidians off our backs long enough for Sokolov to finish her work." As the meeting adjourned, Brown caught Zara's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. The real war was just beginning, and it would be fought in shadows. On the other side of the galaxy, a Vidian warship sliced through the void. In its command center, a serpentine figure pored over stolen data, yellow eyes gleaming with malevolent purpose. The hunt for humanity's secret weapon had begun. The Oort Cloud shipyard hummed with activity, a hive of construction nestled among the icy bodies at the edge of the solar system. Dr. Elena Sokolov stood before a holographic display, her eyes gleaming as she manipulated the schematics of the latest cloaking device. "We've done it," she breathed, turning to Admiral Brown. "The neutronium stabilized the field. We can maintain a cloak indefinitely now." Brown nodded, a rare smile crossing his weathered features. "Excellent work, Doctor. How soon can we outfit the battle group?" Before Sokolov could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the comms, tight with urgency. "Sir, we've detected a massive Vidian fleet on approach. They'll be here within hours." Brown's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of unyielding commitment. "How did they find us?" "It was Zara, sir," Chen replied. "We caught her transmitting coordinates just before we arrested her." Brown cursed under his breath. He'd trusted Zara, never suspecting she might be a Vidian plant. Now humanity's last hope teetered on the brink of annihilation. "Status of the cloaking ships?" he barked. 90% complete, sir," came the response. "But we need at least another day to finish the calibrations." Brown's mind raced, weighing impossible options. Then a plan crystallized. Audacious, desperate, but their only chance. "Get me Captain Pierce," he ordered. Moments later, Jack Pierce's rugged face filled the view screen. Brown wasted no time on pleasantries. "Captain, I'm authorizing Operation Phantom Strike. Take the cloaking battle group and jump directly into Vidian space." Pierce's eyes widened. "Sir, the ships aren't ready." "I know," Brown cut him off, "but it's our only play. Hit their supply lines, create chaos. Buy us time to finish the project and deal with this incoming fleet." Pierce nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "We'll make it work, sir." As the connection terminated, Brown turned to Sokolov. "Doctor, you have 6 hours to get those ships as combat-ready as possible. After that, we evacuate." The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Brown watched from the command center as the cloaking battle group disengaged from the shipyard, their hulls still bearing unfinished patches and exposed circuitry. "Godspeed," he murmured as the ships winked out of existence, jumping into the heart of enemy territory. Aboard the flagship of the stealth group, the CSS Wraith, Captain Pierce gripped the arms of his chair as they emerged from hyperspace. The vast sprawl of a Vidian supply depot filled the view screen. "Cloak status?" he demanded. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Santos, frowned at her readouts. "Unstable, sir. We're flickering in and out of visibility." Pierce gritted his teeth. They'd have to work with what they had. "Target their fuel reserves. Fire as soon as we're cloaked." The Wraith shimmered, fading from view just long enough to loose a salvo of missiles. The Vidian depot erupted in a chain of explosions, sending debris spinning into the void. "We're visible again," Santos called out. "Jump," Pierce ordered. The Wraith vanished into hyperspace, leaving confusion and destruction in its wake. Over the next several days, the human fleet struck like ghosts across Vidian space. They attached false drive signatures to enemy convoys, sewed sensor jamming devices in vital shipping lanes, and unleashed hit-and-run attacks against military installations. In the Vidian High Command Center, chaos reigned. Warlord Thex hit his fist on the war table, scattering holographic displays. "How can we fight an enemy we cannot see?" he snarled. Ambassador Wren, her scales glinting in the harsh light, glided forward. "Perhaps it's time to consider—" A proximity alarm cut her off. Outside the viewport, space itself seemed to ripple. The CSS Wraith materialized, its weapons already firing. Wren's eyes widened in shock as her flagship shuddered under the assault. "Evasive maneuvers," she hissed. But the Wraith was already gone, vanishing back into the cloak. Wren's crippled vessel limped away, trailing atmosphere and debris. As reports flooded in from across Vidian space, supply shortages, military defeats, and spreading panic, the grim reality set in. They had no choice but to negotiate. Aboard the Wraith, Captain Pierce allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as the communique came through. The Vidians were ready to talk. He opened a channel to Earth, knowing that the real work of securing humanity's future was just beginning. The UES Indomitable hung in space like a gleaming sentinel, its hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the ship's grand conference room, Admiral Brown stood at the head of a long table, flanked by the architects of humanity's unlikely victory. Dr. Patel's eyes sparkled with nearly unleashed excitement, while Dr. Sokolov's face remained a mask of cool professionalism. Across from them, the Vidian ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their scales seemed duller now, their postures less imperious. Brown allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction as he prepared to open the proceedings. The doors hissed open. Brown turned, expecting the final members of his delegation. Instead, Ambassador Wren swept into the room, her eyes blazing with impossibly strong fury. Behind her stumbled a figure that made Brown's blood run cold. Zara. Her face was a mess of bruises and half-healed cuts, but there was no mistaking those sharp eyes. They locked onto Brown with a mixture of hatred and triumph that sent a chill down his spine. "What is the meaning of this?" Brown demanded, his hand instinctively moving towards his sidearm. Wren's lips curled into a snarl. "The meaning, Admiral, is that your pitiful victory ends here." In a blur of motion, Wren's hand moved to her chest. Brown's eyes widened as he registered the explosive vest beneath her robes. "Everyone down!" he roared. The world erupted into chaos. The detonation sent a shockwave through the room, scattering debris and bodies. Through the ringing in his ears, Brown heard the distinctive whine of energy weapons. He looked up to see Zara, a pistol in each hand, cutting down human and Vidian alike with ruthless efficiency. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second, and he saw nothing but cold purpose there. "Brown!" Captain Pierce's voice cut through the din. The grizzled spacer was already in motion, diving towards the Admiral as a bolt of crackling energy seared through the air. Brown felt the impact as Pierce's body slammed into him, taking the shot meant for his chest. They crashed to the deck in a tangle of limbs, the acrid smell of burned flesh filling Brown's nostrils. "Sokolov!" he bellowed, struggling to push himself up. Initiate Omega Protocol. The scientist's face went pale, but she nodded grimly. Her fingers flew across her wrist-mounted computer, entering a complex series of commands. A deep rumble shook the Indomitable. Outside the viewports, a massive section of the ship's hull began to separate, thrusters firing to push it away from the main body. Zara's eyes widened in realization. "No!" she screamed, turning her weapons on Sokolov. But it was too late. The cloaking lab, with all its precious research and functioning prototypes, tumbled away into the void. The Shadow Collective agents hesitated, caught off guard by this unexpected development. It was all the opening Brown needed. "All hands," he roared into his comm unit. "Repel boarders. This is not a drill." The ship's corridors became a battleground. Commander Shaw's voice crackled over the intercom, coordinating damage control teams and security forces. Deck by deck, they fought to purge the Collective's infiltrators. On the bridge, Brown and Dr. Patel huddled behind a makeshift barricade of overturned consoles. Their small group of loyal crew members dwindled with each exchange of fire. "We can't hold out much longer," Patel said, her voice tight with fear and drive. Brown gritted his teeth, searching for a solution. Then his comm unit chirped. It was Sokolov. "Admiral," her voice was strained, but there was a note of fierce pride in it. "I've rigged the lab section to overload. It won't be pretty, but it should buy us some time." Before Brown could respond, a blinding flash lit up the view screens. The electromagnetic pulse from the destroyed lab swept across space, momentarily disabling the Shadow Collective's boarding craft. In that instant, the tide turned. The remaining cloaked ships decloaked, their weapons blazing as they tore into the suddenly vulnerable Collective forces. Brown watched with grim satisfaction as the enemy vessels scattered and fled. As the last echoes of battle faded, Brown surveyed the wreckage of the conference room. Bodies lay strewn about, human and Vidian alike. Captain Pierce's unseeing eyes stared up at him, a final look of dedication etched on his face. The cost had been staggering, their hard-won advantage gone in an instant. And yet, as Brown looked out at the stars beyond the viewport, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.